The candle's dim light barely held back the darkness, flickering like it was ready to snuff out any moment. I huddled close to the table, my hand shaking so hard it was a miracle I could even hold a pen. Every nerve in my body screamed with pain, but I pushed it aside. I had to write this down. No one believes me, and I know no one ever will. They all think I'm just a sick man wasting away, feverish, delusional. But I know what's killing me, and it's not some disease. It was that night, the night we thought would be a bit of fun, a foolish adventure. There were 5 of us. Me, Tom, Kate, Felix, and Miranda. We've known each other since high school, inseparable, bored out of our minds in that dull little town. So when Tom mentioned the Elkwood Forest and all the legends about it, it felt like an easy dare, a thrilling way to break the monotony. We weren't kids anymore, fairy tales were for children. But the stories about Elkwood had always whispered of something strange, something ancient and unexplainable. Tom said it was pure folklore nonsense, but I saw the look in his eyes. None of us really knew what we were walking into. It started innocent enough, the 5 of us joking, laughing, tossing the flashlight back and forth as we waded deeper into the forest. But as we ventured further, things got quiet. Too quiet. No birds, no breeze, just our footsteps crunching dead leaves and twigs beneath us. There was this odd smell, a mix of something sickly sweet and rotten, clinging to the air like it didn't belong. I tried to ignore the prickling at the back of my neck, the sense that something was watching us from the shadows. Then, just as twilight began to settle, we saw it, a pale light flickering through the trees, like a tiny, pulsing beacon. We all fell silent, drawn to it as if we'd forgotten why we were even there. We reached a clearing, and that's when I saw it, no, when we all saw it. A unicorn. It looked just like the storybooks described, tall and shimmering white, its mane long and flowing like a river of silver. But as I got closer, I noticed things that made my stomach twist. The horn, twisted spiral, looked like it could slice through bone. And its coat, which should have been pure and smooth, was matted and stained with something dark and dried, something that reeked of blood. The eyes, they were wrong. Black and endless, they gleamed with a hunger that didn't belong on any creature I'd ever seen. "Do you see that?" Miranda whispered, almost reverent, like she'd found some miracle. And that's when Tom, grinning like an idiot, started forward. "Tom, wait," I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. But he ignored me. He reached out, his hand trembling with excitement, reaching toward the creature's nose. I held my breath, every part of me screaming to pull him back, to stop him. His fingers barely grazed its skin when the unicorn moved faster than I thought possible. Its mouth pulled back, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth, gleaming under the pale moonlight. Before Tom could even scream, lunged forward, sinking its teeth deep into his arm. The sound. I'll never forget it. It was this sickening crunch, the tearing of flesh, bone snapping. Tom let out a scream that curdled my blood, but the unicorn kept tearing at him, like a wolf savaging prey. Blood sprayed across the clearing, staining its coat a deep, sickening red. The thing shook its head violently, and I watched, horrified, as Tom's arm was ripped clean off, tossed aside like a discarded rag. "Run!" I finally screamed, snapping out of my paralysis. But I didn't even know where to run, every direction seemed just as dark, just as full of shadows and hidden horrors. The others bolted, scattering into the trees, but I couldn't look away. I was transfixed, watching as the unicorn calmly returned to Tom's body, tearing into him with a savage precision, its eyes gleaming with satisfaction. I stumbled backward, my hands slick with sweat, trying to follow the others. The trees closed in, branches clawing at me, and that's when I heard it, a faint, high-pitched giggling. At first, I thought it was the wind, but then I saw them, drifting like fireflies around us. Fairies. They were tiny, delicate things with translucent wings, darting in and out of the shadows, each one leaving a trail of glittering light in their wake. But as they got closer, I realized they weren't like any fairies I'd ever seen in stories. Their faces were twisted, sharp, with grinning mouths full of pointed teeth and eyes that glittered with malice. One of them darted straight for Kate. She froze, mesmerized by the delicate figure hovering inches from her face. The fairy cocked its head, studying her, and then with a gleeful little laugh, it lunged forward, biting deep into her neck. She screamed, stumbling backward, blood spilling down her throat as the fairy tore a chunk of flesh free, chewing it with a grotesque delight. I didn't think. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind blank with terror. I could hear Miranda's frantic breathing behind me, the crunch of Felix's footsteps as he sprinted alongside us. But then there was another scream, short, sharp, and abruptly cut off. I turned just in time to see Felix vanish into the shadows, his body yanked back by unseen hands. A muffled cry was all that followed. Somehow, my legs kept moving. The forest felt alive around us, a dark, breathing thing that wanted to swallow us whole. My lungs burned, my vision blurred, and I knew we were lost, hopelessly lost. Then I saw her. She was standing in the path ahead of me, a woman, no, something wearing the shape of a woman. Her skin was as pale as bone, her eyes a sharp, haunting green that glowed faintly in the darkness. She smiled, her lips curving in a way that made my blood freeze. "You're lost," she murmured, her voice soft, soothing, wrapping around me like a net. I wanted to run, to scream, but her eyes held me in place, like I was caught in a web. "Please," I managed, barely able to choke out the word. "We didn't mean to." She placed a finger against my lips, and her touch was cold, so cold it burned. She cooed, her voice laced with a twisted kind of sympathy. "You're in our forest now. And we don't take kindly to strangers." Behind me, I could hear the flutter of wings, the soft, mocking laughter of the fairies closing in. They were all around us, circling like vultures. The woman leaned closer, her breath icy against my cheek. "You wanted a fairy tale," she whispered, her smile stretching wider, her eyes filled with something dark, something hungry. "So here's your happily ever after." I don't remember how I got out. They found me at the edge of the forest, broken, bleeding, barely alive. Tom, Kate, Felix, Miranda, they were gone. They combed the forest for weeks, found nothing but scraps of blood-stained clothing. The wounds never healed. They festered, the skin turning black and rotten, no matter what the doctors tried. They say it's an infection, some rare disease, but I know it's something else. I can feel it inside me, crawling under my skin, whispering in a voice that sounds just like her, soft, mocking, promising that they are coming for me. People think I'm crazy. They call me delusional, traumatized. But I know what I saw. The creatures of Elkwood aren't stories, and they aren't cute. They are vicious, twisted things that wear the masks of fairy tales to lure in the foolish. If you're reading this, if you think you can prove me wrong, don't. Don't go to the Elkwood. Don't follow the lights. They'll tear you apart, piece by piece, until there's nothing left. The fairy tales lied. They always have. And if you're foolish enough to chase them, you'll learn the truth, just like we did. But unlike me, you won't live to tell the tale.